Well, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for attending Harvest Wyoming. And my name is Daniel Stewart. My company is High Country Fungus. I'm here to talk about making money with mushrooms.
Where is High Country Fungus?
Thank you. High Country Fungus is located here in Riverton. It's currently transitioning. We are a basement garage type operation, and I'm working through the nuances of finding a facility and all the fun parts of that. We operate mainly seasonally because my garage is uninsulated and it's pretty tough to grow mushrooms when it's negative 37. Little bit of a background. This is a favorite photo of mine. Oh, and let me give you a second here and explain what we're looking at. This is actually a Wyoming mushroom. So this is a cottonwood oyster mushroom, otherwise known as Pleurotus populinus. I was able to find one on the canal, harvest it, and then go through the technical procedures we do in cultivating and work it in the lab and turn it out as one of our fruiting mushrooms. It's delicious. It's a little bit tough, but it has a nice, strong kind of anise or fennel flavor. So it's really good in like a leek soup or something like that. And yeah, one of my favorite photos taken, this is actually taken up in Montana by my wife. And I've got a species of Amanita and a species of Boletus in my hands there. My background, this all started about 10, 12 years ago. I was hiking with some friends and family in northern Idaho. We were hiking Muscle Mountain, and someone come running up with a hat full of morel mushrooms. It was the first time I'd ever seen them, and had no idea what they were. And they look strange. I mean, they are strange. But I was really excited because they started talking about all the different recipes they were doing. At the time, I was working in a restaurant. That had really sparked my love and passion for all things mushroom. Fast forward to 2022. Last year, my culinary mushroom farm is steaming full along. I had participated in the Impact 307 Startup Challenge and was selected a winner for a brand new concept that I'm developing, which is mushroom-grown packaging. So we can replace styrofoam with a fully biodegradable mushroom material. I'll talk about that later on at the end of the presentation. In the process of developing a culinary mushroom farm, I explored a number of avenues in which to diversify my product mix, generate revenue streams, and increase profitability. And so today, I'm happy to share this with you. Growing and selling culinary mushrooms. So we've got a few top reasons why. Strong market value. Gourmet mushrooms are in extremely high demand. Generally, I get about $15 to $25 per pound for my gourmet mushrooms. Home cooks alike and home cultivators are seeking these amazing nutritional and medicinal value. So mushrooms such as lion's mane and cordyceps have been proven to increase energy and mental focus. And yes, those of you like myself who are enamored with the recent released Last of Us series, cordyceps are safe, okay? They will not turn us into zombies, and we will not see an apocalyptic review of humanity.
Unless you're secretly a giant ant.
That is true. The ant brain is much easier to control than the human brain, and cordyceps have developed themselves over a millennia or millions of years to operate that function. I take cordyceps often, especially when I'm feeling ill. It's an amazing immune booster. Mushrooms like reishi and oyster have a wide range of other health benefits, the immune system boosting compounds, but then one thing I really like about a lot of oysters is the anti-inflammatory properties. So I have a rebuilt knee. I don't like to take pills. I love to saute oyster mushrooms and put them on everything, steaks and burgers or just soups or whatever, and it seems to be a great balance for me. And now, the fascinating part, and like I said, what I'll talk about a little bit later, is the industrial applications. So these same mushrooms that are giving us wonderfully delicious dinners and boosting our nutritional values are also crossing into industrial material applications. We're replacing things like foam, building materials, even leather. Mushroom leather is a very hot topic right now in fashion industry. You can look at Adidas as making a mushroom shoe. And it's the next stage of evolution for high country fungus. So what do we know kind of about mushrooms generally? What I get a lot of is I buy regular mushrooms, right? We've only come to understand mushrooms, as white button mushrooms in the industry over the past several decades. However, I would say the past 10 years has seen an increased boom for other cultivatable varieties in our society. White button mushrooms, for those of you who don't know, it is the same as a cremini or a portobello. So this is Agaricus bisporus, and it's harvested at different stages and given different names, right? I hate to kind of like break that one for you, but it is all the very same mushroom. In the very beginning, as you can see in this image, they're just popping out of the substrate, and they're nice and stark and white. When they grow a little bit older, they'll start to turn brown, and then just as the veil breaks and opens and they get big, that's when they are the portobellos. When they get to that brown stage, they're known as cremini. The main difference, I would say, for cultivation of these mushrooms is that they grow on composted manure-based substrates, such as chicken manure, horse manure, cow manure, things of that nature. Usually processed, in windrows or hot composted in some fashion. And then lastly, this farming operation is extremely labor intensive because usually they are large scale operations. White button mushrooms will sell from $1 to $5 per pound. And I mentioned before, with my gourmet mushrooms, I'm seeing 15 to 25 and above. And so that leads us into growing high value culinary mushrooms. Oysters, lion's mane, chestnut, shiitake, maitake, the list kind of goes on and on and on. When I really first started to get into this, I was actually surprised. It was I think my greatest challenge was deciding what mushrooms I was going to grow. My first round of growing, I think I tried to cultivate 7 different varieties at the same time, and it was a little bit of a challenge. They are grown on pasteurized and supplemented ligneous materials, so I usually source things like oak or straw. Hemp will work really well, you know, and these materials are then supplemented with some other nutrition such as wheat bran or soy hull. We don't need to go through a composting procedure with them. They're usually pasteurized by steam in chambers over a period of time, 18 hours or so. Okay.
Do you do that yourself, or do you buy it pasteurized?
I do it myself, yes. And that's an important point to make. In the beginning, I was seeking some pre-pasteurized substrates, but it's significant cost variation to build the simple equipment and do it yourself. The nice thing about steam pasteurization, I still use my steam barrels, and so they're non-pressurized, and they're just chambers that I pump steam into and keep them hot, 200 plus degrees for that time period. And yeah, lastly, it's a smaller production model, so I had a lot of success just out of my garage and basement last year. It was a lot of fun. I'm very interested in hiring and developing further, but if you're like myself and bootstrapping everything and building everything, it's nice when you don't need a labor force of 20 people to pick and pack and deliver your mushrooms. Excuse me. So, like I said, in the beginning, when I started growing mushrooms, I started looking at all of the other opportunities that this procedure can bring us to diversify the revenue streams and increase our profitability. Value added, right? How do we add value to our work? One of the best and first ways to do this is with the at-home mushroom kit. Primarily because the cultivator is already making this, so this is something that I already prepare for myself, and I have the supplies. It's literally just selling off my own supply to home cultivators and potentially other small cultivators that are interested in starting their mushroom operation. It's great for beginners. I love this. This is how I started. A friend gifted me a shiitake block about 5 or 6 years ago and said, you need to grow this. And I did so on my microwave, and I was like poorly negligent to it, and it still fruited mushrooms for me. It's a wonderful opportunity to share the knowledge, share the experience, and develop revenue for the business. Some of the other concerns with this, yes, packaging, labeling, things of that nature. And that's the fun part for me. As I developed my business, I also developed the brand, and I'll tell you, the packaging and the labeling is really important. I've got a kit out there that I did not label, and I had thought it was a certain variety of mushroom, and then it started to fruit, and it was totally a different one. And it was fruiting in the wrong type of condition, so it's not very happy. I debated bringing that in, but I like that I did because it's a happy, mistake, and things are still working. It's still growing despite me. As things develop, right? So as your is growing and the time you have in is expanding, you can open up the door for opportunity to your organization, to your mushroom grow. One thing that's important for mushroom cultivation is the spawn, right? How do we grow the mushrooms? The mushroom spawn is basically just the living tissue carried through on some sort of medium. It can be a liquid medium, or as you see in this picture, grain. And the reason that we use grain is it's nutrient rich and it'll break apart. So I rehydrate the grain, I sterilize the grain, and then I basically squirt a little mushroom juice on it, and the mushrooms are happy, they grow. This is a technical procedure. It has taken me a couple of years to work through all of the mistakes that you make when operating in a sterile environment. So I'm not like a surgeon, I'm not saving lives, but I still have to go through all of those procedures because when you're cultivating mushrooms at the laboratory level, you need to be aware of other contaminants. If your mushroom spawn is clean, everything else will be clean all the way through. I've had the experience of messing that up and then losing 70 bags, losing 150 pounds of mushrooms because I made one simple mistake and I didn't sterilize my equipment, before I went through the procedure. So it's an extremely important part of the process. To be a mushroom cultivator, you do not need to be a lab technician. You can start by purchasing the spawn from reputable vendors that have a decade or more of experience. And it's actually something that I haven't approached because I still feel like I need more time in to develop that in order to be a reputable vendor. I think I have a lot of pride hooked up into that for the mushroom community. I've seen a lot of bad spawn sold, and I'll tell you, there's nothing as heartbreaking as putting all of the work into 70 grow kits and having them all turn into green mold. But the benefits of it, once you do get through that process and once you do start having good sterile technique and good returns, it's low cost supply. Now we did see a spike in grain prices. My last few rounds have been thankfully a lot lower, but it's still pennies on the dollar compared to some of the other things we purchase in the industry. And then it's a year-round production model. So this is something that I can do in the basement. I don't need to worry about the temperature affecting the fruiting conditions and things like that. And that kind of translates into another level here is our liquid mushroom culture. So this avenue is, I would say, for the more experienced lab technician and cultivators. All of my mushroom production is done off of liquid culture, right? We rarely work with spores in the industry. It's just something for nature. It's easier for us to take the tissue, keep it cultured, keep it clean, and pass it along that way. Again, quality and assurance. This is a clear liquid. You have no idea sometimes what's growing in it, so I constantly test my cultures, and I'm looking at, is there any other contaminants, or is there any other mycelial growth, things of that nature. Technical production, again, you can see some of my lab equipment in the background there, my laminar flow hood. And it's a lot of clean work and sterilization in autoclaves to produce clean, quality spawn. There is an increased market demand though. As gourmet cultivation grows, more people like myself require spawn. And it's really the seeds of our trade, right? So if you go to a seed show, you're exchanging those methods to grow the plant. You know, we do the same in the mushroom world. Right? I've got a few other cultivators that I trust, and you know, it's kind of fun. You know, nobody had the Wyoming mushroom before that I showed you on the very first slide, so I got to share that with some of our friends in the business. Log culture and plug spawn. Some of you who have come to see me in the last couple of days have seen that I've offered what we call plug spawn, and that's rehydrated and sterilized wooden dowels that have been inoculated with mycelium. They are used as the vessel of growth. So basically, you drill holes into a log, place the plugs with the mushroom growth on them in the log, seal up the hole, and a year later you start fruit production. Generally, you don't see logs of this size used. This is a pretty gigantic log that somebody did on their property. It's more often smaller 2 to 4 foot logs that are about 4 to 6 inches across. As you can see here, our plug spawn is myceliated, so in the spirals, that white tissue, that's the living mushroom. Okay, and that's the vessel and then the plug is the vessel that we use. Going through this process has been sort of a new learning curve for me, and it's really exciting. Some of my challenges have been shelf life with mushrooms and things of that nature, and same with the kits, the at-home grow kits. You know, you can only keep them for so long before they either start fruiting on their own and whatnot. Plug spawn is excellent. It can be refrigerated. It can last up to a year. One of the downsides to log culture, it's a slower colonization. When I do the grow kits, they're usually ready to fruit within 2 weeks. Colonizing logs takes about a year. It is the lowest maintenance. So if you can find a way to keep them relatively damp, sprinklers, misters, things of that nature, shaded, they really don't need any attention. And they'll fruit seasonally for you up to 10 years.
How long is a season?
Yeah, great. It all depends on Mother Nature. Generally, the season can be 4 to 6 weeks, and it usually rides on the shoulders. So mushrooms tend to like temperatures in the 55 to 70 degree range, and obviously in the rains and things of that nature when the relative humidity is up. I have experienced, oddly enough, I've experienced growth in the middle of July, outside, 95 degrees. Rains come through, and 2 days later, I've got mushrooms fruiting in my dump pile. But yeah, the seasons can be short for, I would say, for Wyoming specifically. You know, we had a really nice October, but who knows how this year is going to go.
It doesn't really need sunshine, right? You could do it in like a root cellar. You could do it kind of in a crawl space.
Thank you.
55, 60.
That's excellent. That's an excellent point. In most cases, the sun is not going to benefit you because it's going to cause everything to dry out, and it's going to cause increased heat, especially our sun here. However, I will say I've got some buckets rooting right now, which is kind of strange. They're on the south side of my garage in about 18 inches of snow. But as that snow's melting, the sun's warming it up enough right now to actuate the fruiting process of the mushroom. But generally, you'll want to keep it shaded. And most of these log culture farms are either done in woods, on wooded properties, or underneath shade cloth. And like layer it up, 70%. And I guess that's one point that I didn't put in, but I'll interject right now. Mushrooms do not use photosynthesis to generate their food. Mushrooms exchange sugars through the material. And most of these are saprophytic, so they are eating the materials as it goes along. Yeah, that's the fun part about mushrooms is they're not plants.
Is there something specific you have to pay attention to with the log selection, or is there anything you have to prepare the logs or anything like that? I mean,
Thank you. No,
because
that's,
it could be already infected, or, I mean, not infected, but.
no, you're right. And that's a great point that I missed. There's definitely specifics you need to pay attention to. In log culture, fresh cut logs, we were careful to put this on our instructions, so if you bought some from us, then it will state this. Fresh cut logs are important because the other microorganisms haven't had a chance to fully colonize that substrate. You're also wanting to harvest the logs after leaf drop and before bud swell, because the mushrooms, again, they feed off the sugar in the plant. And so if you can get those logs right now, that is the time to be doing plug spawn, then you'll have the most beneficial return on that log because it hasn't sent its sugar out to the buds. And then finally, not every log works. So you have to work with medium hardwood and hardwood. Pine, firs, those things will give you 0 to no return. This is the fun part. This is where I like really got into mushrooms. Wild foraged mushrooms as a business concept. Not something you see often here in Wyoming, but if you go, say, down to Colorado, or if you go up to Montana.
Gosh, North Carolina.
There you go. Yeah, I bet you get some pounds of chanterelles in the fall. Yeah, I've wanted to pick the South for a very long time. This was an excellent side gig for me for a long time, and I loved it because it paid for my camping trips. It is very important to approach this practice with caution and care, as wild mushrooms can be dangerous if you're not knowing what you're ingesting, and it's worse there to sell it. Personally, I've gone through a couple of trainings in the past. Mainly, I have connected with PhD mycologists that are identification specialists, and I still use those resources today, whether I'm just finding something or generally, even if I think I know what I'm looking at, it's still important, I would say, to me to walk through that procedure and to reach out to those professionals. Identification through picture is extremely difficult, so I usually get a lot of the same kind of response to that. The best way to identify will be through spore printing and microscopy, so looking at it under 60 power microscope. And yeah, a little fun quote from Michael Pollan: "Fungi constitute the most poorly understood and underappreciated kingdom of life on Earth. And I still kind of feel that way. They say there's about, I think, 5 million undiscovered species on our planet, and every day that kind of changes in certain ways. The interesting thing about Morchella, the morel species, is you can be looking at a patch and be looking at different, totally different genetic varieties of that morel, even though to our eye and even under the microscope they almost look exactly the same. Constantly evolving, constantly teaching us new things. A few things here to talk about with Wild Forage. If this is a concept you're interested in, is definitely, again, I'll reiterate, the proper identification. Mycological groups, trainings, things of this nature are extremely important. Not really available here in Wyoming, but they are available. They are available in Colorado and somewhat available in Montana as well. Legality and permits. You can't go commercial forage Yellowstone. And I've known lots of people to lose even their personal picks because they didn't have the proper permit to haul out the morels. Or they didn't do the proper procedure, right? So you'll have to slice your morel in half and fill your 1 5-gallon bucket and have your permit. More and more Forest Service agents and park rangers are in tune to this. And really, I think if you grab a couple, maybe you're probably fine, but I've seen and heard tales of losing 100 pounds or more, which can be an entire afternoon, an entire day, and upwards of $1,000, $2,000 or more. And then lastly, the quality control. I grade my mushrooms and sell them as such. So our best quality #1A buttons are usually the youngest, just fruiting mushrooms. Sometimes the spore tubes of the porcini, or well, there's no Matsutai. I haven't come across Matsutai. But anyways, when the mushroom gets a little bit older, obviously it's food for other things. So bugs, the elk, the deer, and all of that can affect the quality of your mushroom. So it's important to have a plan for what you're going to do with that. A lot of my mushrooms that I wild forage get sliced and dried, and we process a lot in the field. You can see me here. I've got my Wyoming shirt on, and this is up on Togety Pass, and we just picked about 30 pounds of porcini. Some of the best porcini I've actually come across in several different states. I'm really excited to go back up this year. And what am I doing? I'm cleaning off the butt. A lot of different foragers do this in different ways. I prefer the 99-cent potato peeler that's got a protected cover. I've been out foraging in 45-degree wet weather, and you lose feeling in your hands, and so when you take your brand new sharp foraging knife and you pocket it and you slice your thumb all the way down, then you're bleeding all over your mushrooms, you've lost your quality control. I've also seen people trip and stab themselves. You don't need a sharp blade to clean your mushrooms, and frankly, you'll lose a lot. The other thing I like about this, and usually I'll do my cleaning in the field at the spot that I harvest, because I'm then spawning the area. Stem butts are living tissue, just like that cultured mycelium. And so I'm enriching the plot when I shave off little teeny bits with the dirt on and leave it there. I'll say this, I've been identified by other pickers because of my process. They call me the chipmunk just looks like I'm out there, and and they can always tell what patches I've been in because of all the little shavings that they find around. And in this other picture, these wonderfully orange, beautiful shelf mushrooms are chicken of the woods, and this is a picture that we got off the lock saw. My wife had spotted this massive log while driving down Highway 12, and we instantly did a U-turn and went back, and it was fruiting about 100 pounds of chicken of the woods. The catch here, chicken of the woods in the East Coast is much more tasty than chicken of the woods on the West Coast, and that's because of the varietal difference in what it's growing on. Usually on the East Coast, you're going to find it on the hardwoods, and it'll be thicker. It's usually creamy or white colored, and it won't be as sort of gamey. I've seen people do chicken of the woods fajitas all the time, and I'm very jealous. Our chicken of the woods that grows in the rainforests on this side are often this is a fallen Douglas fir, and it's got quite a bit of bite. It's not gonna hurt you to eat it, but it's not my favorite. So I just generally leave it be and take nice pictures of it. And then this next one, it's a little bit for your entertainment. It's a live pic video. This is my wife Chelsea and myself. This is our honeymoon, and
Hey guys, Daniel here at Country Fungus
Porcini.
on the little honeymoon escape, mushroom picking. Chelsea's behind the camera here, and she just found the biggest porcini, King Chini, I've ever come across. And I say it a lot, things are larger in Wyoming, things are bigger in Wyoming. It's pretty funny, but let's get ready for Boletus edulus. That's Scout having his part. And we're up here on Toby Pass. Oh boy, this is really exciting.
I lose it for mushrooms.
And there's a reason they call this the king. This is the king.
Bad Elvis impression.
Oh my. Chelsea, this is a 5-pound mushroom. Whoa. Wow. Oh man, it's just olive sporing. Yes.
So what did you do with it then?
Ate it. I took that one home, and usually when I find varieties that have gotten that large, when I find porcini that have gotten that large, they're spent. Talking to that mycologist that I know, we identified this more likely to be Boletus granulatus, and it is something that swells so big in such an incredibly short period of time. And it makes sense to me. Here in Wyoming, we have such a short window for these guys to live and do their thing that the bugs haven't really gotten into it. In the video, I tap it. That's something I usually do to see where the mushroom is at, because when it's that size, I've picked it up and it's just been completely mush, and it's gross, for a better word. But one of my favorite things, what we ended up doing, pulling the spore tubes off, taking the stem out, and then that cap is just about 2 inches of pure white mushroom meat. And man, I olive oil, seasoning, throw that on the grill. I don't even mess around. And it's delicious. You can cube it up, you can put it in skewers, you can do soups with it. A large portion of these, like I said, slice and dry. I'll do a pre-dry in the sun because all mushrooms will absorb vitamin D. And so if you give it about an hour in the sun first before you put it in the dehydrator, then you're just increased vitamin D count throughout the winter. They reconstitute and are delicious. That's one of the challenges with other wild mushrooms, morels or chanterelles. They come back and taste kind of like mushroom. Nothing I've come across yet has such a distinct, strong, delicious umami flavor like the porcini. I've got some samples out on my table. You can smell them, pick it up, feel it, check it out. One of my other favorite things to do is to grind it down in a coffee grinder to a fine powder, mixed with sea salt and brown sugar, and that's my rub for the elk or steaks, veggies. I've even done trout with it, and it's amazing. Okay, so that's actually a really excellent segue. Thank you for asking that question. What do we do with it? That rub that I was telling you about, this is that. Value-added mushroom products are everywhere nowadays. It seems you can't go to the store without seeing some sort of mushroom alternative in one of the aisles or the next. There are a wide range of processed mushroom products made from mushrooms grown or foraged. So my leftover mushrooms that wouldn't sell at market maybe, say it was a slower week or we just had an excess crop that week, I generally just throw them right into the dehydrator and save, package, and dry, and receive that revenue stream on the back end, so we're not losing out.
What kind of dehydrator, is it the freeze dry or just regular?
Excellent. I've worked with Wits End Foods and tried the freeze dried, and that's amazing. I think it actually has some beneficial concepts, because when you heat the mushroom, it will start to lose some of its nutritional values. Over the years, I developed my own basic dehydrator, and I've come to need to do about, I call it a 10-pound dryer. So mushrooms are 90% water. That means I'm loading it with 100 pounds of mushrooms, and then in 2 days, offloading it with 15, 20 pounds maybe of dried mushroom product. Generally packaged and sold by the ounce or 2 ounces. I usually just fill the pack up, and I'm happy with it as long as it looks good and the customer's happy. That's just the start. Preserved food products, so that's the very beginning to dry it. Mushroom teas and coffees, and then mushroom supplements. That's the other huge, I would say, value-added concept that is seeing the boom. So preserved food products, yes, mushroom chips, yes, mushroom jerky, and my favorite, the mushroom spice rub. I've even seen candied mushrooms. These almost look candied, and I've tried it. It's wonderful. It's strange how well sugar and mushrooms work together, but I think that the opportunity for preserving your product and developing alternative revenue streams is quite prevalent. One of the best parts about value added in this case is that you don't have to be the cultivator. You don't have to be the forager. So you can purchase your mushrooms from a grower or from a forager and take them home and make your mushroom jerky. You can make your mushroom spice rub, right? I work with a local spice rub producer for a line of mushroom spice rubs. He doesn't know anything about growing or foraging mushrooms. All he knows is that he can make a delicious rub with it, and it's an excellent partnership between us. Probably my favorite thing is that you don't have to be a grower for it. Mushroom teas and coffee. Couple of different avenues with this. So we're seeing a lot of coffees that are being developed with mushrooms added to it. Ground coffee with lion's mane or ground coffee with chaga. We're also seeing that in tea blends. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, the mushroom beverage itself. So just blends of pure ground mushrooms that are rehydrated with hot water, and add your steamed whatever, milk, coconut milk, or whatever you might like. There's a number of reasons to get into this. Again, nutritional value, right? So all of the benefits from the mushroom in your morning cup. The multiple blend options, it seems endless when you have dozens of mushrooms you can choose from, but then you can make your own varieties. So if you're a coffee producer and you want to do a line of lion's mane added coffee, that's open for you. Again, you don't have to be the cultivator to drive this value added product. Mushroom supplements, and this happens in a few different ways. Liquid extracts, bulk powder, mushroom capsules. This is a tincture made from a friend of mine in Missouri, Taylor's Mushrooms. He's fantastic at doing tincture. It is a bit of a challenge to do the double extract and filter and produce a high quality dropper vial. You're delivering all of those nutritional benefits with that liquid extract directly, and you don't have to worry. So if you're not much of a coffee drinker or a hot beverage in the morning type person, or you don't really care for the flavor of mushrooms, you can still receive all the benefits. Bulk powder, I still dried mushrooms for folks to powder on them on their own. That's a means of supplement. And then the mushroom capsules, again, it's quite the procedure to encapsulate anything at high production output, but it's one of the growing demand of mushroom supplements. Everybody just likes to take an easy capsule type thing. Great. So developing revenue streams, looking at different business concepts. Once you have worked through your process, you can start to offer mushroom cultivation classes. There's a few different levels that this can be done. I've worked with a couple of farmers in the past where I go to their property, vegetable farmers, and they want to add mushrooms to their market mix. And it can be done as simple as just this. This is a rehydrated straw that's been probably soaked in lime, and that's to alter the pH level so that the mushrooms can have the advantage over other microorganisms. It's a very simple and fun way for the community to get together, to have a fun experience, hands-on, touching the mushroom spawn, planting usually it's oyster mushroom. It can get technical in nature if you're, I would say, skilled and experienced, and you can develop mushroom consulting and lab coursework as a business model within your operation. Years of training and experience and equipment is really important for this. It is a high value revenue stream though. Anytime you can get paid for your time, it's great. It does enrich the community though, and by that I mean the community of growers. So I'm a community over competition type of guy. I love that we've got other growers in Lander and Shoshone, and I think that we could even see more growth here in Riverton. I think I've heard of some in Jackson and Du Bois. I think every community needs at least one mushroom person, you know, probably more. Now onto the fun stuff. All right, this is the brain breaker, and it's actually it's been a wonderful adventure for me. A couple of years ago, I had a life-changing event. I was picking chanterelles on the lock saw. I stepped in a huge nest of hornets, and in my escape, I did the full triad blowout, and then some fracturing and stuff. So it was a long recovery and a full rebuild. And I was not able to forage, and that was my main source of income at the time. I was forced to look at other things. I had sort of a smaller operation going on in my basement, but I really wasn't growing more than for friends and family. I was just kind of experimenting with it at the time. I developed a mushroom package because I came across it on Facebook, honestly. And I thought, well, heck, maybe I can do it, you know. And so crawling into my basement with the brace and you know, spending hours just working through the process, I created our first prototype. What are our mushroom materials? So that mycelium, it grows and it swells. It's like a foam, and it'll occupy that space. It'll fill, as you can see here, it's filling in between the little gaps. And then at a certain point, I stopped the growth pattern, and we're left with a biodegradable material that's a significant competitor for styrofoam, right? I can grow. The fun thing about mushrooms is that they'll take on whatever shape that they're in, and so we can visually model products and grow a receptacle based on that 3D model and do custom fit packaging. We can also do standardized packaging as well. Now, the world of mushroom materials, I'm at the beginning, and I'm working with the most basic step right now. It gets very complicated. It gets to the level of high tensile leathers where you can't really rip it apart. Different mushrooms grow into different densities, and so depending on the variety, you're going to have a different outcome. And that's been another challenge for me is what mushrooms am I going to use, and how am I going to do this? This one's a pride point for me. Last year, I was asked to grow an acoustic panel for the architectural conference in Sheridan as a display piece for sustainability. So I was connected with an industrial hemp grower in Goshen County, and then I harvested the oyster off of the canal in my backyard and cultivated it to grow the panel that you will see out of my table. And took about 8 days to fully colonize the panel. And a little bit of trimming, you can see down on the edge here, some of the mushrooms just trying to grow out on their own. And this is where I'm at. Very excited to be utilizing things like the maker space here in town, where there's the equipment that I need to develop that clean, crisp, excellent product that is end user compostable. Okay, you don't need a facility to compost my product. You can break it up as mulch under your bushes. If it goes to landfill, you're not going to be up all night wondering what the heck am I doing. The other benefit is agricultural byproducts. So I work with a cabinet maker in the area, and I source sawdust from them. The panel that I had in the previous slide, that was a byproduct of the industrial hemp, and all of these things can be utilized to grow our packaging and reduce our carbon footprint. The fun part is the custom or standardized shapes, so that's where the challenge really comes into place for me, is how to mentally reverse the picture of the item that you're trying to protect, you know, and ship. And yeah, this is my tincture tray. So this is developed for all of my mushroom buddies that make mushroom tinctures. They're tired of putting the packages in styrofoam and sending it off. So we'll have mushroom packaging for their mushroom extracts. With that, we're done. Thank you so much. Thank you to Fungus Wyoming and all of the sponsors. And I'm happy to work through any questions or comments or anything you have.
So did you give us a website and?
I did not. HighCountryFungus.com is my website. We're in transition from our culinary farm to our materials projects, so it's a little bit more focused on some of the merchandise that I developed. But I usually have a portion of the store available for grow kits, spawn, things like that. So we'll have that back up. But more information on materials will be going on to highcountryfungus.com in the near future. It's just not up there yet.
How long will that packaging last that you're developing, like, before it starts to degrade? And how long will it take to compost?
Couple of
And will it grow in your soil
thank you.
bed?
Thank you. How long will the packaging last? So how long before it degrades? How long will it take to compost, and are we gonna see any growth?
Right.
Soil or not?
Grow mushrooms.
Yeah. So we will be running some tests. It really does depend on the variety of mushrooms. On my table, I have 2 different projects that I worked, one with oyster and the other with turkey tail. The turkey tail is fascinating to me. It's a 3.5-year-old prototype that I made, and it's like still the same. And it's almost like wood. It even has a tone when you tap on it. The oyster is disintegrating. I'm probably gonna have to bring a vacuum back and clean my space up. I feel really bad. But again, that's the story that we want to tell, because it's not 10,000 years, you know. Will it grow again? I'm not going to say yes or no to that. I'm going to say I'm always surprised by mushrooms. Always, always, always. It's intended to not grow again, but mycelium is incredible, and it's strong, and it has the potential of doing its thing and growing.
So you haven't heat treated or anything like that to kill the mycelium?
I stop the growth with, dehydration.
Dehydration.
Yeah, usually it's a temperament. You go too hot, too fast, you're gonna see cracking. It's kind of like concrete, things like that. There are other means. You can steam treat, and you just need to elevate the temperature to a certain range and hold it for a period of time in order to fully stop growth. What do you think? Anything else?
Have you ever been hiking on Casper Mountain in late summer?
Let's see, no, I've been up there, but not at that time.
Okay, I was looking on my phone to see if I had the picture still. We were hiking around, it seems like it was on kind of the northeast end, and it kind of sloped down woodsy. Seems like it had rained. And I'm walking by, and nobody else thought it was interesting, but and I wish I could remember, it was years ago, and I thought, this is a mushroom I've never seen before.
Ah,
and I took pictures, but it must be on my camera and not my phone, that's why I asked, you know, I
Yeah.
thought, there's some real different ones, I remember it being tall and several of them, just in one area, and they weren't
Okay.
real close together, they were spread out. I can't even tell you, was it like a candlestick, was it like the traditional mushroom shape, I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was very colorful, and it was something I'd never seen before.
I'd love to see those pictures. You can email me through my website.
If I ever find them again.
Yeah, really. And, or if you go hiking up there again at that time. When was it about you said late summer?
I'm thinking it could have been midsummer,
Yeah, yeah.
mid to late summer.
Yep. These pictures, we took in the beginning of September. We were running up above Du Bois in a few different places, I would say at the beginning of August, not seeing anything, not really seeing anything. And then something about that temperature and humidity change, so when the rains come through, really just sets off the mushrooms. That was one thing that was kind of neat about being up there, is that it rained a little sprinkle every now and again, you know. Whether said it was gonna rain in the news or not. And that's why, you know, I love the mountains. Weather don't make the weather, mountains make the weather. It's an old saying. But I am very curious about Casper Mountain, and the last time that I had been up there, I had, my spidey senses were tingling, and I thought, there might be some interesting mushrooms living around here.
Absolutely.
There are. The guy that runs the Weed and Pest District, takes mushroom foraging groups up there.
Nice, nice,
Really?
nice.
So you talked about taking the gills off the bottom of that. Do the gills separate pretty easily from the other meat?
Right, and so with these, the boletes disperse their spores a little bit differently than a lot of mushrooms, so these are called spore tubes. They can be a little bit acritic, especially at this stage of development. I know people that just love them, and they'll just do stuff with them. I'm not that far into the umami, but it's kind of fun. They just pull right off, and once you get started, you just wring your hand around, and they spore very olive green in nature, and so you can tell that I've been picking porcini because my shirts and my hands will be just totally stained green from the process. One thing I didn't have a chance to talk about too much is mushroom dye, so that coloring, that sporing can be treated with different mordants in the dye making process, and you can create colorful dye baths for mushrooms.
You mentioned a makerspace, is that in Riverton?
Yes, we have a makerspace here. It's at the Brunton building, and it's a very reasonable membership, and it's staffed with extremely knowledgeable people, and the director, David, is very helpful at all stages. So it's not just for adults. They do a lot of things with kids, but they've got everything. They've got CNC routers for wood and metal. They've got panel saws, table saws. They have 3D printers, 3D scanners. Recently, he acquired a thermoforming vacuum machine, and that's how I can create my molds, and then everything, banners, printed materials. You can make coasters there if you want. I know I'm missing a few different things, but I'm a huge proponent for it. It's I think a wonderful addition to our community. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here.